Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to another QuickTank review. This time we're looking at the RHM Borsig, the Waffentrager. This is the Tier 8 German tank destroyer. It has a turret, it has one of the most deadly guns at Tier 8, an option of two very deadly guns at Tier 8, as I'll highlight later on. And if you want to be an absolute glass cannon, able to have a ridiculous amount of flexibility for a tank destroyer to outposition your foes, and use your excellent camera rating to be able to dictate the pace of combat, then this may be the tank for you. If it isn't, stay tuned anyway, and I'll tell you exactly how to handle these things on the battlefield so you can take them out effectively. So the Borsig comes after the PZSFL-5, a tank which I didn't really like, and the Borsig plays out completely differently to the Tier 7 German tank destroyer. You have a fully traversable turret that goes all the way around. Now, while your horsepower to ton ratio hasn't gone up that much, it's rather unimpressive. Your speed limit is now a healthy 35 kilometers an hour, which means that if you can get some momentum up, especially down hills, that means that you're able to get from A to B fairly quick, or at least a lot more quickly than the previous tank. Now, this tank has 1,100 hit points, which is very interesting when you consider that tanks such as the SU-101 has got less than 1,000, and the ISU-152 has got just over 1,000. If you thought that just because this tank was very lightly armored and also very light, weighing just over 21 tons when fully equipped, was going to mean that it was going to get a pathetic amount of hit points, well, you'd be wrong. Now, the traverse speed of the tank is also rather nice. The track traverse is 38 degrees a second, and I'll just highlight the turret traverse now. It is 18 degrees a second. Now, what you'll find when you play the Borsig is that if you're allowed to combine these two, i.e. turn the tracks and the turret in the same direction, this can allow you to re-engage your targets very quickly. However, if you're unable to turn your tracks, let's say that you don't want to affect your camo rating, where you've actually been tracked, that 18 degrees turret traverse can be quite slow. And I'll just highlight on that the fact that this has got a fully traversable turret, the first one along the German tank destroyer line, this means that if you do not turn your tracks, you can keep your camouflage net activated, you can keep your binoculars activated, and your camo rating does not drop from what they call being stationary to on the move, which is a rather significant drop. And this means that you can use your turret to engage your enemies without losing camo rating, which is one of the best things about the Borsig. Now we're going to have a very quick look at the tank's armor. Just a little Easter egg quickly that you can do in one of these kind of viewers. You can see the shells loaded right around the center of ring. Wargaming really did go into quite a lot of detail in these new kind of tank models they've been releasing. But basically, the tank really doesn't have any armor. Really bouncing in this tank is near improbable, as the thickest part of the armor is 20 millimeters. What this means is that most shells that hit you will overmatch your armor, and irrelevant of the angling, will just penetrate and take out your tank very effectively. Due to the fact that this tank basically has no armor, if you do get the opportunity to load an HE shell or a HESH shell, then they can prove absolutely deadly to the Borsig, take them out quicker, and also do more module damage. What this means is that if you're driving a Borsig, you need to be very careful to avoid all fire. And you can do this because the Borsig has one of the best camo ratings of any of the German tank destroyers. I recommend to use a camo net and binoculars on this tank. Because of the fully traversable turret, you can quite often activate them and keep them activated while tracking your targets using turret traverse. And because you've got 400 meters view range, when you combine this with binoculars, you're generally going to be able to see your targets way before they can see you. And you can often fire at them and still have enough camouflage rating to still remain unspotted even after the first shot. Because of this, I do recommend having a camouflage crew in your Borsig. Really, if you do get tracked in this tank, you have to use your repair kit on it and pull back quickly. You can't stay out in the open, because any tank that even grazes your armor is going to damage you. Now, I'd just like to highlight that the Borsig has the option of two guns. You can use this 128mm, which many of you will know is the same as the Ferdinand and the Jagdpanther 2's gun. If we compare it quickly to the Jagdpanther 2, we can see it's got more DPM with a better rate of fire, and 10% better DPM when the gun is mounted on the Ferdinand. It's surprising the Borsig should get this DPM increase over the other tanks, as well as also having the fully traversable turret and having the much better camo rating. Of course, this tank is actually much less mobile than the Jagdpanther 2, and unless it can get some momentum, it's probably actually slower than the Ferdinand. However, this tank has an option that the other two don't. It can have a 15cm gun, which fires 3 rounds a minute with 750 alpha damage. Now, if you thought this was going to have extra high penetration, you'd be sadly mistaken. It only has 215mm of penetration, so unless you want to fire the premium rounds, which have got 334, you're going to find it quite challenging to penetrate most of the targets that you'll meet that are equal tier and higher, because of the 0.4 accuracy and the 2.7 second aim time, making it very hard to pinpoint weak points on your enemy. Of course, having this insane alpha damage can be rather useful. In a close quarters fight, the Borsig can effectively outtrade its enemies, but you're going to have to hope that you can kill them in the first shot, because your reload is really bad, and it's almost possible to fire twice with 490 alpha damage, rather than once with the 150mm. When we compare the guns, there is a large difference in the accuracy and in the aiming time. The guns match 2 different playstyles, and I know a lot of people like to use these tanks in the 742 game mode. Probably then it'll be best to use the 15cm and load heat rounds. Personally for me, in the random battles, I've been able to probably do more with the 128mm. There's less RNG, there's more consistency, and you can often depend on yourself to make that kill, for example, before the enemy gets you. What's lovely is that effectively the better gun is the stock gun, which is wonderful because as soon as you get the Borsig, you can get straight into the fight and start decimating your enemies with, in my opinion, my favorite gun on the tank. Now, it is actually possible to tell what gun an enemy Borsig is using just by looking at his tank. Observe the short 150mm and the ridiculously long 128mm. When you're engaging enemy Borsigs, one of the first things that I like to do is to look at their gun and judge what caliber it is. You can in turn use that to estimate their reload times and judge whether you're going to be able to shoot them twice for every time they shoot you, or if they're actually going to shoot you twice for every time you shoot them. As an example, I'll discuss an engagement between an E75 with the top gun and a Borsig using either gun. Firstly, let's consider that the Borsig is using the 128mm. We can instantly see just how much this gun outclasses the tier 9 heavy tank, with a huge rate of fire advantage, as well as the accuracy in the aim time, but that's not important. We're just going to consider that it's like a close-up fight around a corner. So as an E75, if I see that the Borsig has the long gun, the 128mm, I'll know that really I want to shoot him once, have him possibly shoot me once, and then I want to avoid him until I reload. Alternatively, if I'm in the Borsig, I know I want to come round, put a shot into his lower plate. If he shoots me, well, there's nothing I can do about that because I'm not going to be able to bounce him. And I'll stay round the corner and keep harassing him to make sure I can shoot him again and then pull back. However, let's take an example of the Borsig using the 150mm. If I'm in the E75, I know that I reload before he does. So if I come around the corner, I need to expect that I might take 750 damage. I'm going to do 490 to him, and then I'm going to stay on him and I'm going to harass him until I fire my second shell, and then I'm going to pull back. Also, it's worth considering that his penetration with his standard rounds is really bad, and as long as you angle well and don't give him an easy shot, it's going to be very hard for him to penetrate you. However, if I'm the Borsig driver, I want to try and trade 1-for-1 with the E75, and then I want to pull back to avoid his second shot. So that's quite enough of the theory. Let's get stuck into some gameplay. So here we go, we're playing on steps. And I am pretty much the bottom tier tank. Look at that. There's only one tier 8 heavy tank on the enemy team, and the rest are mediums and lights, ranging between tier 7, tier 8, and then unfortunate for this guy, he's a tier 6 and probably the worst kind of matchmaking you could ever get in an AMX-12T. Alright, so what am I thinking? I'm thinking that basically if I was to go south right now, that would be a disaster for the Borsig. I don't really want to have those kind of close quarters engagements, especially with tanks such as the E4, the M103, the IS-7. Could be a bit of a nightmare for me. However, I'm quite happy to YOLO into this middle part of the map, and I realize, oh wait, that's a little too bold. The enemies are playing quite aggressive, and I pull back. I stop for a second thinking they'll have a shot on the T-54. Looking for it, looking for it, looking for it, looking for it. Unfortunately, we don't quite have it. We don't get spotted, though, and we pull back. I have no idea what he's doing, so I'm looking for some more. I'm just trying to feather the target. Can't quite make it, though. So we can see the enemies are playing rather aggressive down the east. And I still stand by what I said, that the west will be a bad idea for the Borsig. I want to use these kind of bush locations. Now, Steppes is a great map for the Borsig, I feel. If there's enough cover for you, and you can keep the engagement at a distance. And really that's what I like to do at the beginning of Borsig games, is keep the engagement at a distance. You can see here just how poor the gun depression is in the Borsig. I failed to touch on that inside the garage. And I don't give quite enough lead there. And I failed to hit the AMX-12T. It was not the best of shots. We're able to put in a lovely shot there into the T-71, tracking him and doing 537 damage. And that allows the Bat Chat to take him out. So one of the counters, if they try and push aggressively up the west, is to locate here and shoot across. Fired in an opportunistic shot there at the Waffentrager. Wasn't really very well aimed in it. He had already made it behind a slope before we even fired the shot. So hopefully you can get an idea of the mobility of the Borsig here. Gentle slopes are a bit of a problem considering the horsepower of the tank. And it can really slow you down. But having that fully traversable turret allows you to progress in one way while keeping an eye on the other. And right now what I'm doing is setting up. I'm trying to think about, I actually look quite confused here, looking back on this replay. I haven't really clearly engaged anywhere, but I'm setting up now so that I'm able to hopefully handle the west. And now this is the Borsig and its environment. It's taken me 3 minutes and 20 seconds to arguably get into a position where I feel like I'm going to be effective. Right now, I'm also losing most of the other flank. Do I get spotted? No, I don't. Great camera rating on the Borsig. I managed to shoot that Leopard prototype. He was about 400 meters away, and he couldn't even see me. Not spotted again. Lovely. And this is the kind of camo. This is the perfect kind of Borsig situation. We just took out 2 Tier 9 tanks there. I did get spotted for the first time though. That Waffentrager Auf Panzerwehr has also got some excellent camo rating. So now, knowing that an IS-7 is ploughing along that flank, I can't control the engagement range anymore. Once they get to within about 400, 350 meters, you need to expect that when you fire, that they're going to spot you. And we can see the flexibility here of the Borsig with the turret. The enemies are just not paying attention to me right now. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make when playing against the Borsig. It has supreme DPM and oh my god, did you just see that? He just shot underneath my tank. That was pure class. Oh dear gosh. We're going to begin to chew him up. I'm looking behind me to see if an IS-7 is coming in. Yes, he is. So I'm going to keep running. And look at this. Because I've got a fully traversable turret, I can run. He shot underneath me again. How do you miss? How do you miss a Borsig like that? That's ridiculous. All he has to do is shoot anywhere. But I guess the low-profile nature of the tank is confusing him. And the fact that the tank does sit pretty high up on the tracks, and he shot underneath me again as I went up that ridge. That was brilliant. But I'd just like to say, I'm able to run away at, 25, 30, 35 kilometers an hour away from the IS-7 while turning my turret all the way around, which allows me to get into position to take out the IS-8. So now I've got a tier 10 heavy tank making his way up towards me. Our reload has allowed us to get another shell in. And now, because of the rate of fire of this tank, we're able to put another big shot in. And then actually start to outmaneuver him. I try and juke. Unfortunately, we couldn't manage to avoid his shell. But that's okay anyway. We put the third into him. And take out the IS-7. So we got chased there by a tier 9 heavy tank and a tier 10 heavy tank. And now I know I didn't do all of the damage to either of them. We did 658 to the IS-8 and 1,289 to the IS-7. You got to see the Borsig and its environment in this gameplay. We kind of floundered around at the beginning of the game. We finally got into a position where we were able to dominate, really, killing 2 tier 9 tanks without them even really seeing us. We eventually got spotted by the IS-7, but then we were able to use the flexibility that you get from the turret and a little bit of luck to pull out a big situation. Yeah, we managed to run away from the IS-8 and still keep our gun honed on him because of the turret. Now I'm worried about the artillery. And this game is definitely still on here. The Batchat is hunting the artillery. And right now, I do not want to get spotted. If I get spotted, the artillery can absolutely murder me. All they have to do is sneeze on me. But thankfully, the Batchat has managed to take out the artillery. And then I press my help key. I wait for the Batchat. I decide, okay, Mr. Batchat, I can wait for you. I think that if I'm in that bush and he crests the ridge, that he'll spot me. So I was going to pull back further and try and get some distance. Because I saw that he was capping, I figured out that, alright, I know where he is. And I've got enough time to wait for the E4. So what I'm doing right now is making sure I can keep as much distance as possible. I had this funny feeling that he was going to crest up on the ridge lines over there. And seeing how the Batchat is making his way over there, if I get caught there, then that's really not going to be good for me. I have to work with the Batchat to take out the C4, as he does have 1,200 hit points left. Luckily for us, the Batchat is capable of taking a shot. So I can see which direction the Batchat is going to go after the E4 at. He's going to be going from the north of the cap circle. And so I'm going to try and sandwich the E4 from the south. Just going to speed it up just a little bit here. Now note that the gun depression in the Borsig is really bad. What that means is that sometimes you're not going to have the flexibility to be able to get your shots. But luckily for us, we're able to find a sneaky location here. And put in the final shot into the E4. And there you have it. Now, I didn't play this game flawlessly. I missed the shot on the 12T. I could have easily put the shot into that Waffentrager, I think it was, the Panzerfahr. And really, it wasn't until half of my team died that I really was able to start my game. However, you got to see the two key aspects of Borsig gameplay for me. One, control the range of engagement. Try and use the fact that you've got binoculars, a camo net, and you can keep them activated because you've got a turret. If you can keep the enemy between 400 and 45 meters, your maximum spotting range, and 400 to possibly 375 or even 350 meters, then you can fire at them all day and they won't be able to spot you. Once they get within that range, it's time to pull back. And from there, you've got to see the flexibility of the Borsig. The fact that we do have a fully traversable turret and we're not a super slow tank destroyer allowed us, with a lot of luck, to outplay tanks that were higher tiered than us. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the post-game stats. So this was a replay during a 5 times event, and we were able to get 12,285 experience. I noticed in my last video that somebody mentioned, oh, how did you already unlock the 121 when you only played 100 and something games in the WZ120? If you can combine getting 1,000 average experience plus with the fact that your wins are going to be much higher than that 1,000, and they're going to be doubled. I don't grind my tanks. What I do is I just play them consistently and get my daily doubles in maybe 5 or 6 tanks a few times a week. So this was 1,638 experience base. We fired 15, of which we hit 12. We didn't fire the best that game, at least at the beginning. It took me a while to warm up, but once we got going, all of the hits that we made penetrated. And with that 128mm, 12 penetrations equals over 5,000 damage. Now we only got hit twice that game, of which both went through our armor, and we were left with very few hit points. Now this is a reality in the Borsig. If you get hit, you're going to lose your health. If an artillery shell hits you, you're going to die. If a scout with an autoloader finds you, like let's think about a leopard, it will hurt you very badly. If you're playing in the 742 game mode, and a T1 Cunningham loads even regular shells and starts shooting you over and over again, you're going to lose all your health very quickly. You have to make best use of that 1,100 hit points to do as much as you can to your opponents. And luckily for us, because all of our opponents apart from these two were tier 9 and tier 10 tanks, we're able to get a huge amount from the game. And I really enjoy the Borsig because it does not matter about the matchup that you get. It doesn't matter if I'm facing tier 6 tanks or tier 10 tanks. Because your armor is irrelevant, the gun is all that matters. Control the range of engagement, trying to avoid all fire, and put yourself into positions where you're going to be able to shoot the enemy and hopefully they can't even see you. Anyway, let's move along and take a look at some more gameplay. Okay, so here we go. Another terrible matchup. Well, not too bad really, to be honest. This time, half of the enemy tanks are tier 8s. Whereas previously there were only one real true tier 8 tank on the enemy team. I'm playing on Siegfried line, and the enemy have got some very respectable players. I immediately noticed these two in their tier 10 tanks. Got to watch out for them. The E3 is one of the most brutal tanks in the game. We'll highlight that this is in patch 8.9. It's an older replay. I forgot to review the Borsig, and I'm just trying to get a good opinion for you guys now. I know that a lot of you are interested in the Borsig. And you'll notice that the gun is very short. I'm not actually using the 150mm in this tank. I'm using the 128mm. And they basically patched it so that the gun was much longer. So don't be confused, I am using the 128. So what you're seeing me doing here is using these trees on Siegfried line to avoid as much fire as I can, and hopefully be able to engage the enemies. So because the trees are there, you can use this mound to be able to get shots on your opponent. But not if you go down there. Just going to pause this for a second to highlight. Also, I just repaired my gun. So that also knocked my gun out when it hit my turret. So you can stay up here and use these trees to remain hidden and shoot through here. But as soon as you fall down, you fall below the trees. They can see you through the trees and they'll be able to take you out. And the best player on the enemy team in the most dangerous tank just reduced me to 186 hit points. Ouch. So you might be thinking, oh, well, why are you showing this replay, Mr. QuickyBaby? Well, I'm going to show you that don't count the Borsig out. Just because you've sucked out, you've only done 489 damage at the start of the game, doesn't mean that you can't continue. So we're looking for a shot here on the E3. Can't really make it happen. And realistically, what am I going to do now with such low hit points? I'm in a lot of trouble. I am in a lot of trouble. I could get sneezed on right now by any of the enemy tanks. Even a T-69. A T-69 could appear, shoot me once and I'm out. But I'm just going to continue to use these trees. And I'm not getting spotted. Look at all the shots that we have here on Siegfried line. using these trees. Yes, please. These guys are literally 100 meters away from me, and we're using these trees to... Actually, they're nearer to 150. 200 meters nearly, actually. And we're able to just shoot through the trees all day long. This is a position that you can do that. You can do this with any tank. You can do this with any tank. It's just all the more impressive with the Borsig, because of the amazing rate of fire of the gun. And the fact that I'm shooting, you know, quite a few higher tier targets than me. Planted a good shot there into the E100. There's that E3, that sneaky E3. I do want to be able to get him. Didn't quite manage to get through his armor there. But it looked like I was down and out. Not the case. Now, I was very tempted there. I know my body language. I was very tempted to try and go lower down so I could shoot round the corner and be able to get this guy. However, I've quickly learnt that if you leave this hill, the trees no longer help you. If you go down here, the trees no longer help you and you're going to get shot. So we're looking for a weak point on the E3. There are very few weak points on the E3 though. I really need to do a QuickTank review about the E3, because it's a tank that's very poorly dealt with. And as soon as you know about one or two of the weak points on the E3, it's relatively easy to handle. So right now, the Borsig can be a bit frustrating, because I feel a little bit helpless against these tier 10 tanks. But then again, I can't really think of many tier 8s that you can competitively attack an E3 or an E100 in. So what I've decided is that, okay, that position is about to be overwhelmed. The E100 is going to come round the corner. The E3 could come round this corner. If I get spotted there, I die. I'll have done very, very, very little for the team. Well, I guess I've already done 3,000 damage in a tier 10 game. But I won't have achieved much for the team if I just stay there. All that's going to happen is they'll come round the corner. I have a chance to penetrate them once. No one's going to give me any fire support apart from the artillery. And so it's time to pull back. Oh, this KV-4 seems to be interested in me. Oh, we just missed his turret. Unfortunate. So here comes the E3 and the E100. Actually, they're still in the town. They're still in the town. They got spotted there by that T-69. And all of the remaining teammates are the respectable ones, apart from this object and this GW type. Well, they're still respectable players. I'm not saying they're not respectable. I'm just saying that the enemy's arguably better players, according to the stats, are the ones who are left alive. This game was looking very hairy now. So I'm backing this Foch up, thinking that the enemy are going to attack him. So I'm trying to get behind this bush so I can fire through it. Remember that when you fire near bushes, if you're within, I think, 10 or 15 meters of them, they will spot you through the bushes. And yeah, I was within 10 or 15 meters of that bush, so I get spotted. So I'm pulling back. I'm just praying that the artillery doesn't sneeze on me here. E3's playing very aggressively. He's coming right up after me. But I've got to keep shooting. There he is again. He hasn't quite spotted us yet. I believe he tried to blind fire me through the bush, thinking I was there. And as soon as I fired, I got spotted. Now I'm loading an APCR shell here. He's decided to engage the Tiger too, leaving me completely open to shoot him in the side. A massive mistake there by the E3. I've got an APCR shell. We bounce off his MG turret. And with the E3, that MG turret is rather deadly. So we're pulling back here, and we can see the top of his tank before he can see the top of ours. What a fantastic result that was there to take out one of the most dangerous tier 10 tanks played by a very respectable player. So I'd just like to highlight the difference between the APCR shells here, 311, and the regular shells, which are about 246. That 311 can allow you to punch through some of the thickest armor in the game when you need to. That was a really bad shot. I aimed at the front of his tank. I have no idea what I was doing, but I know that I'm going to reload before the IS-4. Oh, such thick armor on the side of the IS-4. If only I'd hit that first shot. Luckily for me, though, the artillery dealt with him. And right now, it's 2 Tier 8 tanks and an artillery versus, at that point, what was an IS-4, a T-69, a KV-4, an E-100, and a GW Tiger. And this is where I feel that you can use the Borsig to outplay its opponents. You never want to stay in the same place. You want to be relocating. And right now, what I'm thinking is, the enemies know my last position. So I'm going to relocate and try and keep the engagement at as long range as possible, while still spotting for my artillery. So we're trying to aim in on that KV-4. Don't quite have a shot on him. I'm always looking for bushes in the Borsig, always looking for a bush that you can use. And that's because your camo rating is paramount. If you get spotted in the Borsig, you die, especially if you've got 186 hit points. So we can see the T-69 and the E-100 are very reluctant to leave the town because they're petrified about the artillery. Oh, we've got a KV-4. I decided to fire clutch there. I got spotted. I knew he was aiming at me. And I decided to fire before I was fully aimed because I really felt that he was going to be shooting me. And now at that kind of a range, considering he could only see my turret, the Borsig is not the biggest target. It's not the biggest target in the world. That's why, with his extra long aim time, he was probably trying to make sure the shot counted. Because of my 2.3 second aim time with my 128mm, we're able to fire first, basically. There's the 100. We put a shot into his track, tracking him up in the air. And he fired. Oh, that was a beautiful moment. That was just a fantastic moment. We tracked that E-100 up in the air. And then he fired. Just totally misjudged his gun depression. And I juked the artillery as well. Okay. Man, even I'm happy watching this replay back at that. I don't know how I've come out of this situation still alive. Now remember, you can outplay artillery players. Go in one direction until you know they're about to fire, and you can judge it, and then stop and pull back. Managed to avoid the artillery fire, and it probably didn't. It could have actually won us the game when you consider that the Tiger II is on 58 hit points. I mean, the enemy artillery can easily take out that Tiger II, and then our artillery can miss the Tiger II. Not the Tiger II. Our artillery can miss the enemy artillery, and then it's a draw. I still don't know how I came out of that alive, to be honest. There was a lot of luck and a degree of skill. I was very happy to be able to put that E-100 up in the air. And I really think that what happened is that these tier 10 tanks got overconfident. They thought, it's just a Borsig. You can't do that. It's never just a Borsig. This tank is absolutely ruthless if it's allowed to just keep hidden and keep moving around, changing its position between its shots, being so sneaky. And that's how you can really carry games, irrelevant of the tiers of the tank that you're against. So I'm being very careful here because I really don't want to die to an artillery right now. I'm thinking he could be east, thinking he could be west. Obviously his last known spotted location was up there. That still doesn't mean that he couldn't have relocated. I'm still looking around. I'm obviously tunnel visioning. It took me a couple of seconds there to see where he was. And let's see how greedy I am. Just going to speed up this replay. Looks like I can never leave an artillery alive, even with 2 minutes left on the game. I make my way up onto the hill. Justice. Just while this game is ending, I'd like to highlight a couple more things about the Borsig that I failed to mention in the garage. And that's that you can take advantage of the Borsig's turret. Now remember that the Borsig will fire out from here, and with most tanks you can't penetrate their cheeks. However, the Borsig's turret's cheeks can be easily penetrated. What that means is that if you can control the engagement, you can very easily get shots up here and over here, and actually shoot a Borsig when it's unable to shoot you. I think one of the best ways to take out a Borsig would be to lure it in sort of a slope engagement, and then basically come round a corner very, very, very slowly until you can just see the top of its turret armor and put a shot into it and pull back. Don't think you can just get behind this tank if it's not tracked. You've seen that when you combine the excellent track traverse with the turret traverse, that's able to very quickly re-engage its targets. And so using little tips like this is going to be among your best bets to take these tanks out effectively. And what we really saw here is even if your best players in the top tier tanks don't really have excellent games, and the enemy's best players in their top tier tanks do have good games, the Borsig, irrelevant of the fact that it's tier 8, can still carry. And that's why I absolutely adore this tank. It's so damn sneaky. If I was in a Jagdpanther 2 or a Ferdinand, I'm 90% sure that my tall profile would have been dominated by the enemies. I also know that my camo rating would have been much, much, much worse. I might not have been able to have that early spree of shots into the town where I was able to do 3,000 damage. And later on, I might not have been able to dictate the pace of the combat when I was around J8 and shooting them as they left the town. All in all, I absolutely love the Borsig. Let's take a quick look at the post-game stats. This is an older replay. It was a 4,394 experience double. That's 1,465 base. We fired 19, hit 18, of which 13 penetrated. We only got hit once that game by the old patch 155mm, which on average does 850, but actually did 914. With this artillery at the end of the game, we really did carry. Did 4,200 damage, so a shout out to you. We were able to pull off a respectable 5,350, of which a large amount of it was against the very valuable tier 10 tanks on the enemy team. Hopefully this replay was a bit of a keep calm and carry on moment. We made a misjudgment at the beginning, lost all of our health, and then with a bit of luck we were able to take the enemies out one by one by one. For the most part because of the fear of this artillery who was doing a lot. I hope you enjoyed these two replays. I felt like they were a good representation of the kind of gameplay that you need to develop in the Borsig if you want to use the tank to its maximum capabilities. Gameplay such as this allowed me to get 1,115 average experience in the Borsig over my 104 games, averaging 66% wins, with 2,600 damage a game, and getting over 2 kills in every game I played, on average. Now the Borsig is an absolute beast. For me there's no debate about it. That for my playstyle, it is the best tier 8 German tank destroyer. I always felt like there was something that I could do in the game and that it was up to me to carry it. And you really have to develop that feeling of long-range engagements, and playing through this lightly armored German tank destroyer line really helped me learn about the importance of camouflage. And I've never thought more about the spotting distance and the camouflage rating on the tanks in the game as to when it really matters, such as when I've played this Borsig. It's definitely one of my faves. I've kept this tank so I can use it in team battles just for the lols. And I'm sure one day I'll start playing it again in random battles, but for now I'm playing with the Waffentrager auf Panzer IV, and I'm quite liking that tank as well. I've still got a lot of room for improvement, so keep your eyes peeled. The Waffentrager auf Panzer IV will be coming to a quick tank review soon. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this tank review. If it's been useful to you, please consider rating the video down below. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments what you think about the Borsig and what I've said about the Borsig. Do you think that I've been completely wrong? Or are you an excellent Borsig player who has come to a different conclusion about the tank? If you're interested, I have done tank reviews on the previous 2 tanks, the Tier 6 and the Tier 7 German lightly armored tank destroyers, so you can check those out as well. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic. And hopefully I'll see you soon.